They take so much time in telling the stories of all the characters involved in that, and you get all of the emotions. You go from fun-loving and kind of joyous, kind of you know, the pleasant interactions between all the players, to all the drama between the love story that's in it, and then the drama between the characters that are in it. So you kind of get the whole arc of emotion. And you're just entertained from beginning to end. Oh. I'm just gonna shrink that down. The music is great. Fabulous voices. Great to be here. Awesome. I said it's nice and the story really does give you so many other stories, and you have so many characters you're rooting for and that you love, and maybe you hate at the end. You know, like the first three. Maybe like because they go. Yeah. I see when they went. And then what I will is the agenda. But it doesn't really matter because you'll go through them.
Reacclimated back to
and then every once in a while, just make sure you're checking up there, because sometimes like spreadsheets. I don't think everybody's showing up. So we just threw out those for to make it work. Yeah. But there's up there. That's it. We can go and show over. That's yours, right? Yeah. College. Yeah. I was ready to go. It was a little.
Where?
In Tokyo. We were in Tokyo. We went to like Nagano and we went to still not email. Oh, they're all around. There's a bunch of extras. Yeah, not language. No, we all study there. And then next time not. I know exactly what
I'll do that.
Exactly like that. I never said facial hair was there. I know they told beard, no beard.
Look at it.
I know. Great.
Carrot. Okay.
Carrot.
Little carrot.
We love them, but
Of course. Yes.
last night was the first night, two or three.
Oh, that was it, okay.
It's,
Cool. Are they, do they do, like,
hard.
Only son.
Last night, you look at today, heaven. I'm having to wake up for 5 times all night.
Oh.
So,
Northern Africa.
Wow.
Yeah, they're teachers.
So you can make your just
Great.
or hip hop.
Like moving from northeastern Oregon to Florida.
Oops. Oh, this is boring. Horrible. Sorry.
Like right out here.
All your
Thank you. I really appreciate that. My daughter checked hers out too, and we donated it to, shorter distance. Yeah.
You're looking for a spot that's close to the.
It's like a.
Oh, the pasture.
I can tell they're like.
And I'd be able to split it.
I don't follow it.
I miss being able to crawl. I can't crawl. You can barely roll over in bed. You'll feel better, I promise. I know, so close, but so far away. Yes. I don't know that how many of these people are showing up. We just cut the main place out. Oh yeah, hi Tanya.
Hi, I'm Megan.
Are you? No, we can
They just put them out.
We can switch them or move them. Oh, welcome to
How you doing?
Well, feel free to move your nameplates around wherever you want. This isn't a just say wherever you want. We're just gonna run after lunch, like at the end of the buffet. We haven't posted the board package resources yet because sometimes people will present or we should be at one of the great. Yeah. Yes, we are. So if you go under board, are you on the resources page? Okay, you'll want to go to resources at the top. And then scroll down to resources or resources and that. Scroll down underneath that. Yeah, you can click on that. Yeah. Listed below under board resources. So that's something. So we didn't. So I guess it's hard because we've added like double system other documents. So we have a core for the base, so we have to remember to go back and add it.
Sorry, boss. It's always me.
Yes. We're challenging. We need one more, but there might be somebody on the line.
Yeah, so let me start by asking, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It's 12:30. So I'm going to start, before we take roll call, I want to establish if we have a quorum or not. So who do we have on the phone?
Ed with Comprehensive Healthcare.
Okay, so welcome, everybody, to the March Greater Columbia Accountable Community of Health. And so let's start with introductions and roll call, and let's start with the folks on the phone. And so we heard FF from Comprehensive Healthcare. Who else is on the phone? We have 3 callers. So who else is on the phone?
Lori Brown.
Hi, Lori.
Hi.
Anybody else on the phone?
No, sorry, no, I couldn't, I couldn't get a sound, so I did it on my computer.
Okay, that's okay. So you're there. Okay, well, this is Rhonda Hoff, Yakima Neighborhood Health Services, and Chair of the Greater Columbia ACH, and we'll go around starting counterclockwise to my right.
Martín Malaves, past chair.
Jorge Rivera, Movina Healthcare, representing NCOs today.
Sandra Flores, Yakima Valley Farm Workers Clinic, representing QHC. Honey Bachelor, with our community services, representing Summer.
Ruben Alvarado, City of Haskell, representing local government.
Megan Bull, Wawa County Department of Community Health, representing public health.
Ruben Peralta, Greater Columbia ACH.
Kelly Spencer, Green Community Health.
Jeff Ferguson, the Allied Health Center of Excellence, representing workforce.
Carol Moser, Greater Columbia. Lauren Johnson, Greater Columbia.
Jane Hummer, Greater Columbia. Madeline Carlson. And a couple more folks have joined us on the phone. Sorry. And on the phone, who else has joined us?
Hi, Rhonda. This is Sarah Bullock-Dorn with United.
We're definitely not. Oh, okay. Yeah. Anyone else on the phone? Okay, well, great turnout. So thank you, everybody. So beginning with, if everyone would refresh their memories with our attestation of the conflict of interest, and looking at the items that are on the agenda today, does anyone have a potential or perceived conflict of interest with anything on the agenda? Not. And then likewise, the transactions, the prohibition and standard for approval statement of the self-dealing transaction. So if you'll review or refresh your memory on our policy regarding self-dealing transactions. Okay, and so we do have space at the end of the agenda for any public comment. If anyone has statements they would like to make that for items that are addressed not on the agenda. And if there are comments addressing any items that are on the agenda, we will take those as we address those agenda items. So the first item is the consent calendar, which includes at this meeting just the minutes from February 15th meeting. Those are posted on the website. Those were not sent out. And so hopefully you've all had a chance to review the minutes. So is there any questions or comments on the minutes from February 15th? Have you all looked at the minutes from the February 15th? Okay, so if there are no comments, would anyone like to make a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Moved by Sandra and seconded by Megan. Did I do that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? And okay, so we are on to the director's report. Carol.
So last month, actually, we sent out the board minutes immediately following the board meeting. So it's probably been at least a month since you've seen those. We're trying to condense them. So Ashley and I tried to get those out the very next day so that you guys can, the board members could see what had been discussed. So it might have been a long time since you've seen the minutes, but they were actually sent out quite a long time ago. Also, I'd like to acknowledge that we really have 2 new staff members since the last meeting. So Ruben Peralta has joined us. He's now the Community and Travel Engagement Specialist. And Lauren Johnson is going to be filling Megan's
Lynn's role as communications and administrator and administration coordinator. So we welcome you guys. Thank you. And Sam Wardell is in Oklahoma this week finishing up selling a house. So she would normally be here, but she is busy doing that kind of stuff, taking care of life, I guess. So we're going to start calling this the Greater Columbia ACH report because I'm going to be asking, now that our staff is getting bigger, I'm asking staff to submit some articles so that we can broaden the scope of topics that we cover. And so with Sam's help, I put together the first article about whole person care. The staff met with our new consulting firm from OHSU. You might recall Mike Bonetta. Mike Bonetta was our regional coordinator, and he has been contacted with OHSU, as has Dan Bizzini. So we're working with a team from OHSU and Tenfold Health, as are 4 other ACHs. So this is kind of our collaborative attempt to come together as ACHs to share resources, to share expenses, to share expertise. And so the other 4 ACHs sharing in this contract are Olympic Community of Health, North Sound, ACH, Navigate Pacific, Miami, and North Central. So the 5 ACHs then are coming together and trying to work out some joint agreements for services. And one of the things that our consultants saw when we were taking them through kind of our broad plan was, so we have these 4 project areas and we have this approach, and what we're really trying to get to then is whole person care. So this whole idea of practice transformation is the framework that is going to get us to that whole person care, and that really aligns all of our project areas. And so Sam talks about in this article, well, so what does the transformation practice look like, and what does a PCMH, what does a patient-centered medical home look like, and how does that relate to primary care delivery? And so, as outlined in some of these changed concepts that are developed by the Safety Net Medical Home Initiative, the framework of a patient-centered medical home is really that your leadership is engaged, you have a good quality improvement strategy, you empower your patients, you have continuous and team-based leadership, you've got good relationships with your staff, you're organized, you practice evidence-based care, your interactions with your patients are very centered around them, you've got an enhanced access and care coordination. So as we're looking at our project plan and our implementation plan, we're going to be trying to list all those and looking at those clinical practices that, at least according to the data, might be falling a little bit under what the other practices are doing. And there's some that practice whole person care better than others, and so that is our attempt, having Sam on board to help with this practice transformation, becoming a patient-centered medical home. So that's really what is the springboard for this month, and the theme is all about practice transformation and how that helps us get to value-based payments. Because under the new model, when you're being paid for a suite of services, it behooves you to have all of these efficient practices in place that get you to better outcomes and better patient outcomes. So hence we renamed the strategic planning work group to the practice transformation work group, because they will be the work group that will be the champions within all of our clinics and our hospitals and our organizations that are going to be helping to drive this transformational change and helping their own staff see the value in practice transformation and how that relates to the patient. So it's really just a way to organize this group around our 4 project areas and help our providers to be successful. We had a wonderful opportunity. The next item is about the Tribal Council, the Yakima Tribal Council. We had a wonderful opportunity to go in front of the Tribal Council. I have to say, Tung, it was a little intimidating. the fact that we got to be in front of the tribal council, and I just so appreciated the introductions that they gave to us that were present at the meeting. It was very formal and very gracious. So we had brought up Christina Peters from the Portland office of the Native Dental Therapy Initiative Project, and she was very eloquent in explaining what a dental health aid therapy program looks like. She talked for quite some time. Maxine Janis, who's from Heritage University, was kind of the thread that tied all of us together, and then I talked about Greater Columbia GCACH and what we were willing to bring to the table in terms of possible sponsorship of some folks that might be interested in the program. I think it was very well received. The nice thing about a GHAP program, it can be implemented on a reservation because they don't have the same laws as Washington State. But it is really a wonderful career path forward to any individual that decides that they want to be a dental health aid therapist. And I think the thing that struck me the most about Christina's presentation is she said, you know, these young people are now role models for people on the tribe that might consider this a profession and that have not had is and how they can go out into the community. So I don't know if you have anything else to add that you can talk about the GCACH program. I have not received audio, but I really think that is a very strong possibility that it will be there. We definitely have enough chairs to do that, and then also the substation out there might want. So I think that would be I work in the schools as well as branching into the schools, but starting talking to high school students who may be interested in doing that. So I want to push those to the announcement, see where it's going. It's pretty exciting. I think it's a great workforce initiative. When we're talking about social determinants and health security, I think this is important to bring these professionals into practice, you know, the people and everybody else in the community. How does dental health aid relate to dental hygienists? They're a little bit higher level, but they have a little bit more latitude to practice. They have to, the first 18 months they practice under a dentist, but then they can go out and they can do some fillings, they can do some a little bit more than a dental hygienist.
But they are dental hygienists. Like
Yeah. Yeah, that like, okay. Cool. Only 2 years? Dental hygienist is bachelor's class.
So most programs are.
Oh, okay.
It's not required.
Oh, okay.
Most programs in Washington.
So it's higher than a dental hygienist. It's a pretty intensive 2-year program, and the only place that is teaching it right now is in Anchorage. So if we sponsor somebody from, you know, Yakima, then we would have to pay their expenses, and so that would be part of the scholarship that we would consider.
Would kind of fall to that conversation. Or whether that we should even mention to how oral health, mental health, health focused workers might complement the work there. Oregon is doing a lot of work with farm workers.
We're waiting to do it in Washington as well.
Right.
So, yeah, we're probably a year out, maybe. But working on it, of course. And that's hygienist plus additional training certification to do the community component. So just taking that community component and enhancing it a little bit more so that they can handle more of the social work aspect of the position in the case management versus strict hygiene. How long you're in the business?
Mine gets a lot.
Well, and they're far less intimidating than your dentist. I mean.
I'd be curious to take a look at their curriculum, how much of that, I mean, it's more, is it primarily technical, professional focus, or is it also paying attention to the coordination?
They also address some of the operational programs, which carry a lot of the.
My sense is that it is fairly technical. And GCACH is looking at offering programs at the Valley Community College. They're kind of want to go down that road. And as we know, dental health aid therapists are not necessarily welcome to the dentist's office. So that's why we're looking for the opportunity for the administration. So the next piece is the website transformation, and what Megan's going to take you through our website redesign a little bit later on the agenda, and then we're going to let Wes talk about technology and GCACH.
So I'm sorry, Wes, you probably need to get closer so the folks on the phone can hear you. Thank you.
So this is just an IT update on, as we all know, there's a lot of areas that are part of the transformation project. They're going to be highly dependent on information technology, including tracking and monitoring of participating providers or prospective participating providers as they go to achieve pay-for performance and pay-for reporting. In years 3 through 5, we're going to be exclusively reliant on pay-for performance and pay-for reporting for incentive payouts. So creating a mechanism for capturing, aggregating, and reporting of that information is critical. The HCA is going to be doing a report out in a cadence of about 6 months. We would like to do something more frequent to support quality improvement efforts, possibly quarterly, maybe even monthly. So to make all that happen, we've been reviewing a number of software products. One was LifeQI, another one is PSI. These are being used by some of the other agencies throughout the state. There's another one that we'll be reviewing in about a week called Zara, which is tied to Upstream Health, which we had a presentation from last month, or actually last week. We also had a presentation by CMT, Collective Medical Technologies, which is responsible for putting EDI, emergency department, software in hospitals. They have another product called Pre-Manage that will allow the sharing of care plans, and it will do more as well. We're really excited about that particular product. In general, we believe that there's not going to be one product that might suit all our needs. It may be 2 products. Whether you're a small provider, a large provider, rural, hospital, primary care, it would be great to have a one-size-fit-all, but that may not be relevant. It's a good question. The Data Management Committee, which Jorge and talking about that, to do integration into the electronic health record is a time-consuming process. But obviously, it takes a lot of support from the IT infrastructure of the organization. Small organizations probably won't be able to do that, so we would have to put them entirely if we wanted to connect with them. The other option is to just have them report out to us through something like a SurveyMonkey or a monthly Excel sheet or something, and then we would enter the information into the software. So we can do that. I don't particularly like that. That's prone to error. It's time-consuming. The better system would be to have something that's integrated. So there are trade-offs for both sides. I wanted to give a quick report on, I believe we talked about that we had an RFP for IT integrator. I think I might have mentioned, maybe I didn't, Rob Arnold, who is an independent contractor, has been selected. And we're going through the contracting process with him right now. We're also looking to put together an application. In fact, the application's already in draft form, but has to go through the final review that will help select possible project areas that will tie into this pilot IT integration project.
Can you talk about the role of the IT integrator?
So, the IT integrator is somebody that has been used by another GCACH to put together a project around a specific, small, well-defined use case that involved a lot of collaboration between all the providers that were involved. So the IT integrator came in, worked with the providers to put that use case together, and then developed the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure that would surround it. In the case that we looked at that was happening over on the west side of the state, he used Pre-Manage, which I just talked about, and another product called Strata Health, which is a very low-cost EHR that's available in Canada, although it also integrates with Epic. And the project helps do the transmittal of care plans across providers and e-referrals. And the use case was specifically around primary care to substance abuse to social service agencies. So it was kind of like a Medicaid assisted or a medication.
I think the idea behind this, I'm very familiar with what's been done in Olympic by the same contractor, is we also had the conversation about the Pathways Hub and should we implement the Pathways Hub and spend all this money. And a lot of what that system did was standards and processes, but also it was a technology, fundamentally, a very expensive technology, by the way. And here we realize how expensive that could be. So Olympic took the different approach of just hiring one integrator so we don't have to buy many pieces of software that already exist, mostly from providers, but to put a layer of a small cloud technology to connect to those pieces and receive the information for the ultimate goal of providing a technological solution for referrals, that you could refer people from between agencies, social services agencies and clinical agencies, without having to spend in a new system for everybody to learn and to use and to install. So that's been the goal. Olympic's been working at that for, I want to say, 6 to 8 months now, and there's a pilot. So it's a very good way to go about this because it's already, the road's already been traveled by the OCH at a much lower cost than the full implementation of the hub.
And as we said before, this is not meant to supplant or replace HCA's work around the clinical data repository and their health information exchange. We support that work, involved with that work. This is meant to just be a test pilot around a specific use case in relation to care coordination.
Yeah, and I think one to your point and to Megan's point in the question before, what we will try to do in the HIT committee is to create kind of a better view, a bigger view of how data will flow in the ACH and the different components of what the ACH stakeholders are. So this makes sense because you have a new referral solution, which is in the end this project's a new referral solution. This other software that they have been seeing is how you connect. What does an EHR do? Where's the data repository? So at some point we're going to have to come up with a data model that says this is how data is going to flow, so we can capture information from our providers, report information of our outcomes to the healthcare authority.
I don't know enough to have a point. So, question.
Sure.
Do we have a vision yet about what our relationship will be to One Health Court or the All Claims Payer database?
So One Health Port is part of the state's clinical data repository, health information exchanges we just talked about. It's something that we fully support. Most large provider organizations within the ACH are now submitting claims to One Health Port. It's still something that's evolving, and we're watching to see what will happen with that. The All Payers Claim Database is something that we're aware of, but we haven't really talked about how it might influence our work. It has the possibility of doing some data reporting to our area specifically or indirectly. Thank you.
The other, how broad is that? Is it going to be statewide or
What?
the one that you guys are talking about?
Which one?
Health part? The health, yeah.
One Health Port is statewide. It's part of the health information technology plan that Healthcare Authority is overseeing. It's tied in again to what's called this clinical data repository. We can spend a whole presentation talking about the outline of that work. Rick Rubin is overseeing that. It seems to be working, but we're patiently watching.
But right now, you can only put information in, you can't pull information out. That's still true?
I believe so.
I think the HIT committee will have at some point to get together, put the models up, and get them ready, and then bring them here to the board and present what is the data management strategy of the ACH. And those components need to be mentioned, and we need to be a little more specific about how we will be interacting with the CDR, with One Health Board, etc. That's what actually Wes and I are meeting after this meeting to get that going. And we will be calling the overall HIT committee, which is about 15 people, in the next couple of weeks. I believe next Tuesday.
Okay, sure.
Any other questions?
If anybody else, I'm sorry, Ron, if anybody else wants to be on the HIT committee to inform that, sorry, if I heard the door. Yeah, if anybody else wants to be on the committee, let us
I
know.
would be told.
Any other questions about that?
Did we get a new graphic designer? These graphs are very cool.
Well, if that takes us to our next agenda item.
So I just thought I'd walk you all through the new website really quickly. I'll preface it with if you notice anything that's off or anything missing that you'd like to have available as a resource, anything like that, please just send it to myself or Lauren. I'm here through next Friday, and then after that, Lauren is taking the reins. So just let us know. We definitely want to make it as user-friendly to you all and put up any resources that you're wanting to look at frequently, anything like that. Good. I'm glad you guys like it so far. Yeah, we did a soft launch to kind of give you a little bit of a surprise. You'll notice that the URL is shorter too. It's GCACH.org now, so you don't have to type out the whole alphabet to get to our website now. If you go to the old URL, it'll redirect you here though. And we've also shortened our emails too. Same thing with those though. If you are using our old emails to reply back to us, it'll still shoot forward to our new inboxes. Just so you guys know. So this top piece, you see we have our nav bar up here. I'll kind of go through that in a little bit. Our logo up here is our home button, so if you ever need to get back to the home page, you just hit this and it brings you back here. This top slideshow is known as the Spotlight feature. So this is where we can feature different things. I mean, we can do a number of things like news articles, resources, really whatever we want to put up here. I kept it simple for this first month so that as people are learning the new layout of the website, they can hit the main areas that they're probably looking for. If we scroll down, we see our news section here. These top four are our featured news articles. And then if we go down to more news, this has all of our news. So this is our featured news, plus the archived stories that they're not as new, or we just want them phased out and not featured on the home page. So if we click on one of these, it'll show you the news with the ability to share. So this is about that we're hiring practice transformation navigators, and we put the job description in here. And at the bottom, there's a button to apply on Indeed. So we'll go back to the home page. Below is just a quick snapshot of some upcoming events. This auto pulls the next 3 events that are on our calendar, whether they're internal or community-based. And that's another important point. If any of your organizations or you know of any events that you want featured on our calendar, just shoot us an email and we can easily put them up there and add all the details. You can link to websites or registration pages, whatever you need. Just let us know the details and we can put it up there. This section right here is just some extra links. It's kind of a catch-all. So if you've made it this far scrolling down on the homepage and you haven't found what you've been looking for, this should help. If you want to see any other links here, please let us know and I can add those. our mission. This is our global footer, so this is across every single page. And then our sign up for our newsletter is right here now. So if you click that, you can subscribe here. Let's see. So I'll go to the About Us page. This will probably be a really high visited page. This talks about all of our, our board, leadership council, committees, and our LINs. I'm going to show you guys the board page as an example of what each of these looks like. So this is where you should be able to go to get a catch-all of where all the board resources and upcoming events are specific to the board. So if we scroll down, it talks about the board, gives an overview, and it has all of your pictures. So if you're missing up here, let us know. I tried to send out an email maybe a month ago asking for professional pictures if you have them. And if not, it just displays your initials. So no big deal if you don't have that or you don't want to provide it. But just let us know. We can add those. This also has an upcoming event section, but this is just featuring the board events. So this is the next 3 board events that are on our calendar. You can also sign up for updates in any of these calendar sections. So if you do that, you can add your email and it'll send you like just a little blurb every week about any new events that have been added.
Will that update any, like if you clicked on that one, would it send an update for anything that happens on the website?
I think it's anything. I believe it's any calendar invite, yeah, or any calendar event. And then below that, we have our resources section for you all, and these are just specific to the board. So we'll have minutes here, packets, which are always added after the meetings, right after, in case anything changes or updates. And then the board binder, which we've gone over a little bit before. And these are all broken out individually, just so you don't have to download a big zip file to get all of it. The only thing that's really big is the project plan, obviously, but that's the last one if you're wanting to access that. And also, each of you have details. So if we click on you, it shows your picture, all of your information. I didn't give, Rhonda has her email up here because she's a contact for a local health improvement network. So, but I think everyone else, your phone numbers and your emails are not listed. If you'd like to change that, let me know. But I figure most of you probably didn't want that out there. And then her bio below. And it also links to her organization if we click on that. So if we go back, and I'll show you what I mean when I'm talking about the local health improvement network. So if we click here, and this page still needs some information that we're working on, has a map of the LINs within our region, but it lists Rhonda here and Dan. So that's why it's showing their email.
Like all of a sudden, all my emails disappeared.
Yeah, and if you have issues with that, let us know, and we can provide a phone number or something else instead. So I'll go through the news page we already looked at. That has all of our featured plus our archive stories. We'll go to the calendar and see the full calendar view. So this has all of our meetings that are open to the public and that people are free to call into. So as you can see, we had our leadership council meeting last week. Today is the board meeting. And this is the Northwest Rural Health Conference. And if it has this gray background, that means it's an all-day event. So you can see that it's stretching across those 3 days. If we click on this, if you hit add to my calendar, it'll download an Outlook event that you can add to your calendar. You should all be invited from myself or Lauren now, but you can do that for other ones that you're not on or for outside community events. They all have that option. So if we click view details, this is the event detail. It gives you location, time, date, and the virtual call-in information. If there was a link that needed to link outside the site or anywhere else in the site, a button would be here. And then any documents associated with this event can go underneath that.
This is awesome. I just checked the events that I've sent to you, and they're working really well.
Good.
So that's
Yeah, I was happy to be able to add those and use those as our guinea pig, and they've been looking good, and they've been helping me find different things that I wouldn't have found otherwise. So, yeah. And then really the last couple pages I'll go over resources. This is a big page, and this is where you'll find a lot of our materials. So we have feature resources up here. We'll keep those like basically with the most recent GCACH report, minutes, and packets. That's probably what I'm figuring will be the most accessed. If you'd like to see something else up there, though, give us any ideas, let us know. More resources below. This lists everything. So I only have committee resources for the Budget and Funds Flow Committee. If there are other committees that want to list any of their resources, like minutes, agendas, anything like that, they can go under here. Board resources. So this is duplicated from your guys' page, right? It's the same exact thing. It's just displaying here because this is all of our website resources. Leadership Council resources, all their minutes, packets. We're going to start adding the links to their recordings, which just go to a YouTube link if you want to sit through that on YouTube. But because we've been doing a lot of presentations lately, so if you missed the presentation and you want to go back through and listen to it, it'll be on YouTube. GCACH resources. So this is kind of a catch-all for everything else. Presentations that our staff have given. And newsletters, so these links to our online newsletters, the reports. You can see that this month we switched over to just the GCACH report. Internal resources, this is just kind of some other random things that didn't really go anywhere else. And then external resources covers any PowerPoints or other outside resources that Greater Columbia hasn't created themselves. So that's kind of a catch-all for everything else that has been provided by other people.
Megan?
Yeah.
Would there be an option, and maybe it's not a good idea, but it's just an idea, to have like community resources where where we're listing like the different, like maybe I'll just use Aging and Long-Term Care, for example, the Aging and Disability Resource Center. So for if you're an unpaid family caregiver or so that people could link in and then get to a website that might help them if they're looking for community social service or health service or something like that. Or I don't know if that would be appropriate or not, but
it is definitely an option, and it's super easy to do. So if that's something that we'd like to put up there and just start compiling community resources, I'm assuming you mean more for like, our stakeholders and partners could obviously use that, but also for the public, right?
correct.
You're thinking, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's definitely an option. It's very easy for us to add another group and call it community resources and start linking to some of the stuff of our website. So I'll make a note of that and start that group.
I think a good example might be like if we do have a workforce committee and then we have a link directly to the demo network and the quarterly, where I think the results are actually going to be coming out there. So that would just be a direct link to a state. I don't want to use the term authorized. It's a resource that's available to everyone across the state.
Yeah.
But not everybody really knows how to get to it.
Yeah.
Or directly tie it to our workforce committee.
And we can list it. The great thing about this is, we can add workforce committee resources and we can make sure that it's in both groups. So it could be featured under workforce committee resources and in community resources. We could put it in multiple places. Lauren's gonna do great. She's gonna fill my shoes and do way more.
I'm gonna do my best.
So that is our resources page, and then lastly is just our contact page, which just has our physical location, and then all of the staff contact information below. It's pretty straightforward. Any questions? Where to find anything? I know it's a big change from our last website, so.
Great from our last website.
Yeah.
We never have to come to a meeting again.
So I want to say that Megan has really put a lot of time and energy and had weekly communications with the communications committee, exactly what we needed to get the information out about our resources. And so I just thank you so much, Megan, for making this.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. Yeah. So before we leave the director's report, under Leslie's report, there's a graph down there. Do you need to say anything about that?
That's just an example of one of the software products. I should have labeled that. That came from my Life UI to show that it created a statistical process control chart.
Okay.
Which if you understand that is when providers progressing on certain metrics, we can indicate when there's a significant change to the prior performance.
Okay.
Those graphs are from that software product.
Okay. Thank you. So that's clarification. Okay. Anything more on the GCACH report? Any comments, questions from any of the board? Okay, so we are on to action items, and the first is the February financial statement. Where are you?
Okay, I know you guys wanted a more condensed version of this because the finance committee already reviews it. So if you have any questions, or if I'm going too fast, just interrupt me. So the first one is the statement of financial position. This is the balance of funding that we have for our operational expenses right now. Within the checkings, we have $35,000 and change, and in the money market, which is our savings, we have $5,955,000. Below that is just some current liabilities as far as our credit cards. We have some expenses on that, and of course our great taxes, and that's going to be increasing because more people, they want more money, I guess. So for total funding that we have available, it is $5,990,395. Right, moving on to the next budget versus actuals. This is just for the current fiscal year of 2018. So it's broken out. You'll see at the top, there's all our revenue, our $6,165,000. The investments is what we've received from interest on our money market, which to date is $9,693. Our expenses to date, $138,000. You can see the burn rate all the way to the right. It's only 8% of what we budgeted for this year. Few expenses in the Yakima Valley funding and the HRSA funding, but not much. So total expenditures for the year is $139,790, and below that is the total remaining operating budget. And then at the bottom is just a complete roll-up of all accounts that we have in all the categories and expenses within that account. And the next two, so you have a statement of activity of what you are used to doing, and then if anyone wants to get more detail, following that statement of activity is I added columns that basically break down and say what was spent where within that column. There's not any outrageous expenses this month. With interest included, we only spent $35,814. Any questions on those? Okay. So the next section is the audit requirement. So we talked about this in the finance committee a little bit. There were some questions asked, and we're getting quotes from CPAs on how much the audit will cost. So for our contract for the $6 million, which is our operational expenses, we aren't actually required for an annual audit. And the reason for that is it was federal flow through, but once we earned it, it is no longer federal funding, and it falls under our financial policies. So that $6 million does not technically have any like single audit requirement attached to it. However, all this other funding that we're about to get for district incentive funding, that will be federal funding. So it's a little unclear with that contract right now of where we're at. Other ACHs have started their audit and had lawyers look at their contracts. And there's a lot of fight back and forth as to if this falls under the Single Audit Act for us and for the providers.
So we're trying to work it out right now with CPA to figure out the actual answer to that, to provide you guys a concrete answer for it. But, you know, it is in our financial policies to actually do an annual audit. So we're in the process of trying to find someone to do that. Some of the questions at the finance committee, do they have some references or audit work completed with similar lines of ACH? It's your, let's see, on the third page following the audit requirements, there is a list of references from Northwest CPA, who is our current accountant. So all these quotes are from them. What does the 7,900 level audit include? So you'll notice on the following page that has the Northwest CPA header. It kind of broke out 3 different audit levels that they have. We wanted the full load of 7,900, and what it contains. The next following page, it gives you all the breakdowns of what each level of the audit includes. A lot of that 7,900 is just audit of the financial statement, which is, I think, what we're looking for. And is the internal testing SOX compliant, which I know Brian asked for, and the answer to that is no. We are getting another quote from Moss Adams. They are doing a lot of work with 2 other ACHs, and they submitted a proposal. So I just got in contact with him yesterday. He's going to be submitting a formal proposal, and I made sure that he's going to answer all the questions you guys have prior for Northwest CPA. So when we get that, I imagine it'll be my next board meeting that you'll be able to see a further breakdown. But this specific CPA company knows the ins and outs of what's going on with ACH. So we're really interested in them because they just have so much background knowledge. And Carol might be able to speak to it. She had a personal conversation with the CPA. I don't know if you have anything.
Right, so they applied to be that audit firm for Northtown. They were not chosen, but they, it was only because there was another relationship that Northtown had with another auditing firm. But in speaking with Chris Rivard yesterday from Moss Adams, he actually was a speaker on health economics. So he's very familiar with what's happening across all of the ACHs. And the thing that appeals to me about that is that I think any auditing firm that you have, or even any CPA firm, you want them to be really familiar with your business. They can be a real asset. And he knew all the ins and outs of what was happening with value-based payments, essentially to press with his level of knowledge.
So typically with federal funds and the procurement, they usually typically ask for at least 3 bids. And so another option might be also to get a bid from Clifton Larson Allen.
Okay.
They're a large nonprofit. They do, I mean, the majority of their business is nonprofit. So that might be a third option that you look at as well. And who else was sent on the finance committee call? I'm trying to remember weren't you on that, Chief? I don't know. Was it just me and Brian?
Yes.
Okay, because I think, I'm trying to remember, but because our recommendation, and you may have said this, was that we wanted to be fully compliant with the super circular, right? And one of our questions was, $7,900 felt really cheap. And so the idea of getting a couple more bids for a fully compliant audit was a strong recommendation from the finance.
Yeah, and it sounds like, so from Moss Adams, he said, typing up the formal process to provide us, they said it's going to be around 20,000. Which sounds more in line. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and approve the financials first before we go into the discussion. How about if we do that? So are there any questions? The recommendation does come from the finance committee, and Brian's not here to accept the financials. So I guess let's start with it. Are there any questions before we do that, and then we'll have the audit discussion. So is there a motion to approve the financial statement?
Second.
So moved by Madeline and second by Sandra. Is there any further discussion on the financials? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, thank you. So now let's go ahead and talk about the audit. Questions or comments about the audit?
So I want to add that I will be meeting tonight. I'll be bringing Natty here after the board meeting. I'm meeting with Sue Burke. She's the new executive director of the Healthcare Authority. And this question about the contractual obligations, the audit versus federal funding versus what's going to happen with the providers, because as this money flows out to the providers, I'm not sure that all the providers are ready to do, a single audit on these funds. And so we want to get clarification, because within the contract that we have between the Healthcare Authority and Greater Columbia and all the ACHs, for example, it's not clear. So those are the messages that are coming back from the auditing firm saying, this language is contradictory. So Allison, Carl White, and I are meeting with Birch this evening, and we'll be asking her that very question, because I'm sure that the providers didn't sign up for this program thinking that they were going to have to spend a lot of money in doing financial audits.
And you've kind of alluded to that, but it also depends on whether you're a contractor or a vendor for services, whether those federal funds then become part of your single audit. So we have both types of contracts in receiving federal funds, and some of those have to be included in our single audit and open for review, and the others don't. So it's also the type of contractual arrangement that you have for those.
Okay.
And the amount. Because a provider that gets $20,000 is not going to have to do a single audit. $500,000. Good, $500,000. Is that a total audit or per year? Per year. Other questions, comments? Is there additional information that you would like Carol and Kylie to get before next month when we make this decision? So, just point of clarification, will the selected entity then be preparing the 990? And so I think it'd be helpful for them to put in that cost as well.
I will be placing that cost included with the 20,000. The 990 is actually about 1,500. Okay.
Okay. Do either of you have any outstanding items that you think you want more guidance on as you go out for bid on these?
This is actually one of the areas where all of the ACHs are collaborating and trying to get clarification on the contractual, what the contract says versus, on the front page versus what it says internally, trying to find out the subcontractor language. So we're all kind of perplexed, and we're all in different stages of doing audit. So we're just at the very, very beginning stages. But as we find out more, we'll share this information. So that's been really helpful.
All right, well, thanks. Good presentation. Okay, so we are on to the exciting budget and fund flow session.
Okay, so I think the easiest route on this will be, I'll let you know what the Budget Fund Flow and Finance Committee has cleared in something to motion, and I'll explain every section of this spreadsheet, and then we can all tear it apart or have questions after. Okay, so the first motion that came from the Budget Fund Flow and Finance Committee is the percentage allocations to Medicaid and non-Medicaid providers. So as you can see just from our list, there's a significant number, a larger number from the Medicaid providers, being 44 out of the 64, as opposed to the non-Medicaid providers, which is 20 out of 64. So the motion is to if you guys have any input at the end or anything like that. So those are the two motions that we need approved on today. Okay, so start out. The first page is the Medicaid clients and the providers, or not clients, Medicaid providers. And then the second page is the non-Medicaid providers, so you can see who falls under what. You'll notice the next section is the Medicaid clients, Medicaid served by the providers. We're working with Ken Gold and Dan Mazzini and Carol meeting with Sue Birch tonight. We're really trying to find a way to get these numbers in a non-duplicated format. So this is still a work in progress, but there's no funding allocated to it right now. The first thing for approval, project participation. This was pulled from the LOIs. So project participation, participation total, and partnering provider involvement, all three of these relate to each other. The project participation is how many each provider checked off on their LOI that they'd like to participate in within our four categories. We attached $3,000 to each project participation, and what this is going to include is kind of a narrative per each project that they're participating in that we will want quarterly from them to let us know, what they're doing, their progress on it, and things along those lines. And then it lists the partnering provider involvement, their categories that they actually checked off. The LOI submission, we've attached a $1,000 stipend to this. This is kind of just you spent this time to fill out the 12-page LOI, which is time-consuming for you guys, so we'd like to reward you for that. The project facilitator and the project facilitator total, we've attached $5,000 for if you're a project facilitator, and that goes to the project facilitator belonging organization, not to the actual facilitator. Same thing with the board participation. If you're a board member, we've attached a $1,000 stipend to that, and that will go to your belonging organization. The MOU, $1,000 stipend, and the financial executor. So the next steps after we actually approve a formula for 2018 and have dispersed the funding, I'm going to have to work with each organization to establish a signed MOU so that we're covered to provide this funding to you. And the other half of that is getting signed up for the financial executor. Every organization, whoever they put on the LOI, the name should have received an email to sign up for the financial executor portal. And this is going to be how the funding is dispersed, so it's mandatory that you sign up for it. And how are we doing? What's the rate of return on getting provider organizations to sign up for that? So right now we only have about 10, which is not very good considering we have 64 providers. So if you know anyone that may want to be pushed, I think it'll be pushed out definitely. For those that have signed up, if they get a monetary, their stipend and their payment, I think it'll definitely trigger other people to sign up quicker.
So if you're a CEO, close your ears. But on most of the LOIs, the name on them is going to be the CEO because they're the signer. So you might want to send it out to the people that are actually participate in the GCACH and say, tell your CEO to sign this.
And the other kicker is that another thing that we've been getting a lot of questions on. So yes, the CEO was the name placed on the LOI, and of course they don't want to handle it or they don't do the finances, whatever the case may be. The CEO or whoever's name is there still has to be the one that signs up. And then once you're signed up, you can add other emails. So you can throw it at your CFO or whoever's going to handle that. Yes.
I was looking at this board total column, and there's 1,000, and there's one 5,000.
That would be a mistake. I'm currently not on
So
the
our organization had a change of CEOs during the deliberation process here. So should I contact you offline and figure out how to take care of that?
Yeah, if you could send me an email, we can get that taken care of. Okay, so.
Can you guys remind me what was the criteria to determine organizations being on the first page as providers or on the second page as non-Medicaid providers?
Oh, it's just general management.
they give fillers.
Sandra,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not a lot of money, but
we'll confirm that, but we should still get paid. All right, was there any more questions on that? Sorry. So Kylie, if there is an organization that's been inadvertently left off, like Yakima Valley Community College, I don't see that here on here, and I know that you submitted an LOI recently. And that has been updated. I know we print out the material before I received the LOI from them, so.
I signed it because our contract people said that the reality is the president.
Oh.
And so we'll have to do, once the LOI comes through, we'll have to, it'll be actually a really lengthy process. Nothing goes fast.
Some of it's slow. And then we'll have to look at the try on you to get you guys signed up in the portal. There's a little bit of confusion, different pieces, there might even be a separate. Is there a separate process for the tribes that I was hearing about? So there's different categories. It's a drop down, really. So there's a drop down that asks what kind of provider you are, and instead of choosing traditional Medicaid or non-traditional Medicaid, you would choose tribe. That's the difference, and then it kind of trickles from there as to how it changes and updates the contract with the It's all very complex.
So how soon will the MOU be coming out?
So as soon as we approve a full formula, which definitely isn't happening this time because we're still working on it, I can start writing up the MOU. So I want to say April, because I'm hoping by the April board meeting that the funding formula will be established.
What's the process for the formula to be presented, published, discussed, approved?
So because we're still working on getting Medicaid clients and different, and people wanting to add new columns and categories, it's kind of been up in the air. So right now we have what's in green that is trying to get approved this time, and I'm hoping that by April, budget fund flow and finance and board, that it can flow through the final form.
So the board will be approving today which entities or how much money for the different kinds of entities, understanding that the actual specific number of entities can change in either category.
Correct. So the board today is going to approve what's highlighted in green, which is the stipend monetary values toward each of those categories.
Okay. Trying to understand. So that is even before we know which organizations will actually make the final list?
So the organizations that are provided right here, we're basically taking for face value, and that is the list. There are a couple additions. For example, Dan, but it's not an open LOI process still. We've requested from specific entities, for example, regional broken out into 3 other hospitals rather than just regional together. I know we requested some from within networks because we took networks off. We're now allowing those that fell within the network to provide their LOI.
So let me rephrase. I think I understand. Anybody that submitted an LOI made the list. It wasn't a criteria. Am I correct in saying that? So it wasn't an approval or a denial process. Anybody that submitted an LOI made the list.
Meaning it's in one of these 2 cases.
They're all on the list if they submitted. What's undecided, or not undecided, what's trying to be clarified is on the LOI, we listed the number of Medicaid clients we serve. What we want to validate is to see if we can get actual numbers from the healthcare authority during a specific period of time by provider organization.
So this number right now is self-attested.
Yeah.
And we're trying to get valid numbers so that we know that we're comparing apples to apples by organization. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Can you restate what you're hoping to change the funds flow percentages to from the Medicaid and non-Medicaid?
70% Medicaid and 13 non-Medicaid.
So one of the things that I had this conversation with Carol and I don't think I had this conversation with Dan too at one point, so forgive me if I'm wrong. But one of the things that we have talked about a lot at the board meeting and at the leadership council is the influence and impact of social determinants and trying to get more providers and organizations on board. And we talked about this a lot in our local healthcare coalition as well. And so I guess one of my questions, and I would ask, my suggestion is to ask the Budget and Funds Committee to consider is whether or not it wouldn't be worth incentivizing a social determinants assessment, just as we have the PCMH and the MEHAP, whether or not it wouldn't be a value to give an incentive to provider organizations for including some kind, and not necessarily having to specify a specific tool, but a social determinant assessment of some kind into their practices. And I'd like to throw that on the table and ask what people think of that.
It's a bad idea. I know Better Health Together doesn't call it a social, doesn't put it in a category called social determinants of health, but they have a similar where they have a 5% flow of funds so that those who are doing that work get a little bit of a bonus. So it's not uncommon with other, at least one other ACH region to do that as a way of encouraging that work.
And have you heard of others that are doing that, Carol? Besides Better Health?
Not specifically, but each ACH has a different way of allocating their funding. And social determinants is a youth category. And so what I'd like for the board to think about is we're trying to set up these practices for success. So the things that make a good patient-centered medical home PCMH are the things that we want to incent providers to do. So we know that any kind of quality measurement that providers can utilize to either screen or stratify their client base is really good practice. You know, screening for social determinants is a good practice. We know that team-based care is a good practice. So we have listed in one of the columns that's in white this willingness to screen for social determinants as a way to reward those providers who are screening, and then as an incentive for other providers in the future to consider that.
But that one is specifically for non-Medicaid providers, right? Isn't that what that page is?
It's part of continuation.
Well, that's still part of that.
Yeah. So the first two pages.
Is 2 pages.
Yeah. So it's actually the third page, I think, is non-Medicaid.
Yeah. And that's the one that, isn't that the one that says willingness to screen? I think I was just reading them up.
They both do the same. Yeah.
That's the one that starts with Assaulting County.
Right.
Right, they both say willing. So it's on both spreadsheets.
So are they considering, have they talked about that, Tyler?
Not a whole lot. There was mention of it, and then when I had conversation with Dan Vizzini, he also brought up if we want to include social determinants for these providers, we can use, I think it was the CNI number.
Yep.
And
Which
so,
is what we used in Olympic and the funds flow committee with Dan Vizzini. And we used the CNI index to basically determine social determinants.
I don't know what that is.
Community needs something, and if the index, not community needs index, and it's a way to rank population, prevalence of population high need by zip code, and it's actually very good work, and I can say that with Dan joining this task force, I don't see why you guys should not be shown the same, because that's intellectual property of OHQ.
yeah,
That organization.
he actually provided the CNI for each zip code that falls into our county. So if that's something that we want to consider, then we definitely.
But that's not an individual.
No, that's demographic assessment, and what that's trying to measure is the impact of social determinants in specific regions, because the Olympic model, it's similar in some extent, but it's implemented very differently, is the natural communities of care, where you will have kind of a clinical provider leading the implementation of the change plan in that area. So what the community decided was to have some weight and some money assigned to social determinants, but to have that basically driven by the clinical providers who will be leading in that particular region. They have 3 counties there, so every county is the community, natural community of care. They will have small money for specific social determinants agencies. That's going more directly to like the equivalent to CAC here will receive some money, but it will not be directly. Well, it will be money that you receive from the ACH, but the decision of who they are will be taken by the providers who are part of that institution. So to your question, the answer is in Olympic, yes, that's being done. And it's been determined by the geography of the natural community of care and by the use of the community needs index by zip code to determine concentration of needs.
Well, I feel like Ron just said earlier, like I'm trying to say something I know a little bit about, but it's probably not enough to sound clear. But in terms of the CNI, does that imply then the amount of work that's going to be provided by those organizations regarding social determinants of health? Or it's just an indicator, right?
It's an indicator of population concentration. So if you're a housing agency serving in that zip code, it will be assumed, because that's your service area, you will have a high rank in the CNI index because you are an organization that serves in an area of high poverty.
That's so different than what I'm, I guess, suggesting.
It might be.
I could tell you, we know our zip codes that are super high needs.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm suggesting is we need to scale.
Right.
The individual effort of identifying those individuals and families that are dealing with those issues of no housing or inadequate food or inadequate clothing or education. And the only way to do that, in my opinion, this is an opportunity to get more people doing that in the clinical setting, to do those comprehensive assessments and the social service setting, I guess. Somebody comes in and says, I need help with transportation. Well, that's great. What are your other needs? And if we get more people doing that on an individual basis and looking at what are the resources in our community, whether we have it or my neighbor down the street has them, then could we look at an opportunity to incentivize more people to do those assessments and find out how to access those on an individual basis?
It's really a best practice. And I was really impressed with the Yakima Valley Farm Workers. We saw the data presentation that Carlos gave in Portland. Wes provided that to us. And it's a 9-questionnaire. I was really impressed with yours that we saw, that we reviewed during that, the last county care coalition meeting. I think it's a great incentive for all providers to be able to do these assessments. Now, do you guys currently get reimbursed to do the assessments? So this is one way that we're trying to incent this kind of behavior, is to pay providers to do that, or organizations.
And a lot of community health centers have something, but it's pretty restrictive. There's a small group of community health centers, and so this is a way to get more, and especially the private sector, I think, involved in doing that.
So when we talk about social determinants tools, we have collected some to prepare, which we talked about the National Coalition is one, and then there are others.
CMS has one.
Well,
that was shared also.
Right, exactly. Just an update. So the ICD-10 codes actually have a series of codes called C-codes, which can measure social determinants. So thinking about, picking your assessment is the first step on the part of the provider, then what do they do with the assessment? What do they do with that data? They keep it in the patient files, they somehow improve it in the EMR. It's kind of a leading thing to a whole lot of other work. The C-codes are relatively straightforward. I don't think that they're sellable codes, but they are ways of tracking information.
They do add, the diagnoses do add to the chronic condition to the severity of the patient.
Yeah. So thinking about a comprehensive way to provide information, about that as well.
So, one of the problems I have with doing assessments is we don't always have the resources to deal with the results. So if we're going to be doing this, what are we going to do to financially help these
these organizations to gear up so they can actually handle these things. Because you start going through this assessment and someone realizes that, wow, I've got all these things going on, and they were hanging on until they see this in paper, and then they just lose it. So I don't want us to, I like the idea of incentivizing the providers, but I think that we need to put something else to support the referrals. And I'm wondering if the incentivization to the providers might be, or something could be the successful referrals, some kind of tracking from the agencies that are receiving. And so if I'm getting a lot of referrals from a provider, that provider is doing a great job. Maybe they need to be rewarded, appropriate referrals, I'm saying, not just a lot of referrals.
Kind of the care coordination piece, just at grassroots level, in the sense, that there's somebody with housing needs, they're referred to coordinated entry, and what's that is.
And I was just going to say, with transportation, any qualified healthcare appointment that individual is entitled to transportation resources, and so few people realize that. So just even getting the information out to the different clinics and service providers, and if that was part of the receptionist booking the next appointment, do you need help with transportation? If not, directing them to that. So just, I think there's many kind of simple things that we can look at doing that would help individuals access the services that are already there, but then looking at how to build capacity for those additional resources that are needed. So you're not referring them to a resource that, they.
So, hello?
Hey, hold on, Laurie, just a second.
Anyway, it's just we can shorten that lead time. I think we have more people.
Okay, Laurie?
Yeah, sorry. It kind of went in and out. I didn't hear what was just said, but I wanted to underscore what Madeline had said and wondered, is that not part of those healthcare coalitions that are locally? Aren't we supposed to also be developing some care coordination protocols among ourselves? These may not necessarily be funded by the ACH, but just some care coordination protocols that we think would be good.
Good point. Other thoughts on this topic?
Just that we are setting aside a significant amount of money for information technology. And so we'll be talking a little bit about the behavioral health incentives, which is $4 million this year for those smaller organizations that are currently connected with RSN, CHO, to gear up to be able to bill Medicaid. So in addition, we also have set aside, I think it's $2.5 million for those kinds of IT upgrades, so that as we go into these practices, and Sam and her team goes into these practices to help them improve their information technology, their e-referral systems, or their EHRs, then she'll be working with each one of them where they're at, so that they can incorporate some of these assessments and screenings and referrals and whatever it takes to improve their technology.
But those are, let's call them different funding streams, right? I mean, the $4 million you're talking about is the incentive. It flows through the GCACH, but it's the incentive for having become media adopters. And this is the whole. This is the 100% of waiver project funds, which is different from the incentives for.
This isn't the whole of it. This is the $7 million is set aside from the entire amount. So in addition to this, we have another, I think,
the domain one.
$2.5 million, and then and then we also have even some in design funds. We have some funding set aside. So we're trying to set aside significant funding for IT infrastructure, because if there's one legacy that we can leave after we're gone, it's having these providers set up for success and being able to do value-based payments.
I wonder if it would not be good if we could take a look at the whole again. Not that, because there's been a lot of movement over these numbers over the last year or so, with the news of the numbers being smaller and the news of the region coming into IMC and getting an additional incentive. We should be able to take a look at the whole and say, this is going to domain one, this is going to be in infrastructure investment, workforce, IT, whatever. And this is going to waiver projects specifically, and within waiver projects, this is how the money will flow for clinical entities, non-clinical entities, to support social determinants. And then the incentives for joining IMC should be a little separate, will go mostly to SUD and behavioral health providers. And see the whole, so everybody can see a little bit of the flow of how much is going to which sector, and have that conversation based on that, because we know that the clinical system will have to receive a decent chunk of the money, but it would be good to have a good full picture at some point. And it's mostly because it's changed, you know, those numbers a year ago versus today look very different, because there's new numbers coming in, and there's others today in the table. So I just feel, and I haven't been part of the funds flow, but we had a small conversation on the funds flow with the sector, with the MCOs, and in general we feel good about the idea. I'm just having trouble seeing the 100% where is it going to go, even for this smaller scope. I don't know if we need more work on this.
Well, there will be more work on this. It's not done.
I mean before agreeing to change the current PVR of this.
So, we started at 50-50, now you want to go to 70-30, is that what
No,
you're
it was
saying?
at 50% to Medicaid and 33 to non-Medicaid. And then the remainder percentage was going to tribal and GCACH.
And so what you're wanting to do now is
70% to Medicaid and 13% to non-Medicaid.
But that's within this one category.
That's only within this incentive budget category.
so I guess what I don't percentages. I'm sure that they'll come to where they need to come eventually, but is there an advantage? Is there a benefit to increasing the non-Medicaid providers, to going after non-Medicaid providers? Do they provide something that we would want, that we're missing? Or is it just, well, they happen to be Medicaid, they happen to be non-Medicaid, it's just going to be fine? I guess I don't understand why we would choose a specific percentage of each one unless there was an advantage or there was something that we needed from it.
Do you remember the discussion at the funds flow committee?
I think the reasoning was, at the end of this, the whole thing is the Medicaid transformation.
Yes.
And so these are the Medicaid providers that have to be on board before that can happen. I think that was the reason when we wanted to give them a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I'm thinking of the non-Medicaid provider. I'm trying
Well,
to, that's like.
I know, I know all of those. When I look at those, I think they all serve, a lot of them serve Medicaid clients. They just don't bill
They don't
for
bill for it.
Medicaid.
Okay.
Just like the health center, well, they serve a ton of Medicaid clients. They just don't bill because they don't have to bill. But I think that there's a assumption that these people aren't serving Medicaid clients.
I think that they are supporting the Medicaid clients outside of those professional entities. So when I look at this, I'm looking at school districts and communities and schools. Then you have the actual Medicare impact on nonprofit, but she also has I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, everybody. She's also a counselor, and she also has a Facebook page that has low income people that go on there. It's free to give away, or if you have something to give away, give it away. If somebody needs it, they come on there and they get it. And people to people kind of networking. And she's got over 2,000 people actually involved in that. But there's a lot of these on here that are the support systems that the lower income
them better. And when you get them to stabilize on the basics again, you're going to have better outcomes when they enter into their, because they're getting their needs filled one way or the other. Community outreach type of things help with that.
So then, listening to you, I was saying, is there a need to go for more of these things? I don't know. When we're adjusting things, I'm wondering why we made the original decision and what we might lose if we go to this other proportion. That's all.
So just to offer another perspective, I think also when the Budget and Funds Flow Committee met last fall, and we were looking at the allocation and distribution, we didn't really know how many Medicaid and non-Medicaid providers we would get. So we took a wild guess. We said, well, let's give half of it to Medicaid and 30% to non-Medicaid. And then when we saw the number of Medicaid providers be the predominant, 60, right, or however many, we realized then if we did that allocation formula, we would be giving the non-Medicaid providers like 4 times as much as the Medicaid providers would be receiving, because just disproportionately the way that the math turned out. So the Budget and Funds Flow Committee came together at the beginning of this month, and said, wow, that seems to be a little bit disproportionate since the Medicaid providers are really going to be doing a bulk of the work.
Having more of the impact.
And having more of the impact.
Where we have to have an impact with all these dollars they're allocating.
Well, it's not the percentages that's important, it's the amount. So if the amounts are equitable, then you're not worried about 70% here and 13% there. It sounds to me that those are just the numbers that came because this is what we got. I'm okay if that's what it is. It just sounded like we were trying to fit something into something, and now we're changing it to fit what we have, and I didn't understand. The other was a guess, and this is what we have. But that makes sense to me. You know,
yeah.
We all budget and then ruin it. We start working stuff.
I think that's a fair characterization that you carry, is that when equitably, you need to be equitable to your Medicaid and non-Medicaid providers.
Other members, let me just ask, other members, so Carrie, you're on that committee. Are there other members here that are on that committee? Or anybody on the committee?
Darlene's the chair.
Okay, I just wanted to know if there's other important pieces that the committee has discussed that haven't come up on the table. Are there other pieces you want to share?
And then I think the other thing that was found out is that some of the other ACHs are allocating all of their project application funding this year. We had originally thought we were going to parse it out over the next 5 years. I think that what we will be recommending to the Budget and Funds Flow Committee is that we go ahead and allocate most of that $7 million out this year. So that's going to be significantly more money. The thought is in the future years, then those providers are going to be earning those funds through the incentives. So this is just the first allocation. This allocation is different than next year, where it's going to be all based on paper performance. This is to get the providers engaged, excited about doing the work, and thinking about practice transformation and how they can implement some of these changes within their own organizations. We're trying to incent them to be patient-centered medical homes, incent them to do the NEHAP, incent them to participate in some of these work groups. And so it's really just all about trying to engage the providers at this point.
And so so what I'm hearing is we do have a couple more individuals that will be submitting LOIs. But and I'm seeing that Memorial, Virginia Mason Memorial isn't on the list. Is that right?
Yeah, they're on
are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're on their front page, Madeline, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th from the bottom, I think.
All major health systems.
There. Oh, okay.
And all the FQHCs.
Okay.
And we've asked.
Could you talk about Yakima Regional or Astrea Health and what
So we requested that they break out their 3 hospitals, that they submit 3 individual LOIs, and so I haven't received those
everyone covered.
There's a number of what the change represents of the motion. So this much money was going to Medicaid versus non-Medicaid, and it's going to change to this much money.
Yeah,
That's the actual number.
I don't have the prior number of what, well, 50% of 7 million, so we have to figure that out. But up at the top left corner, 70% Medicaid providers, you'll see would be $5,030 total. And then same thing in the top left corner on the non-Medicaid, 13.5%, which equates to $907.
So that's the new number, but you don't have the old number.
Probably we can calculate it 50%.
I can pull up the calculator.
Or you can change the Excel formula to 50%.
Okay, well, that's asking a lot.
Sure about website.
Right. So, what the Budget and Funds Law and the Finance Committee have approved is the new allocations of 70% and 13%, and everything that's highlighted in green, those stipend amounts.
So if we see on here, like organizations that we know are not a patient-centered medical home or something else, like, has there been any validation?
So Sam pulled a document, and that's what the GCACH and the PCMH is based off of saying their eligibility. So if you have different.
I'm like, I know.
Well, to clarify what Megan just said, on the PCMH, this isn't whether they're already recognized, this is whether or not they've done the assessment. Isn't that correct?
Yes. Yeah. And well, and the thing is with this, okay, only, according to Sam, only 2 are actually doing the assessment if no one else has. However, we want to incent them to do the assessment. So this monetary value that's in these cells doesn't mean that they've done it. I'm just reserving funds mainly because they have the option to do it or opportunity.
For those that are already recognized, they don't also need to do the assessment.
No, and those that have already completed the assessment, which will be approved through SAM, will get paid for completing it.
But if you're already recognized as a PCMH, you don't need to go back and do the assessment. That's my question.
So you've just mentioned there's at least one additional group that needs to be added to the list. Are we doing any type of set aside for potential new partners? I mean, this is still planning year, and we could identify additional partners, both Medicaid and non-Medicaid provider partners, who we would want to enhance this list of individuals within our network.
So basically where it's set up right now, this is only for 2018, and our idea was to only accept people on an annual basis.
Okay.
Because of that. However, with how we're setting up the funding, down in the bottom left corner, you can see kind of how much money is remaining from the Medicaid portion, which is $3 million. So there's still a lot of open funding that could cover oncoming stores.
And we are approving like this exact amount for this organization for participation total, or are we approving the allocation methodology here?
So you're approving the methodology and the stipend that is included with that.
You're approving an amount, a proportion of the amount, and by consequence, you're approving the amount of money available for 2 different organizations. I think there's a lot of progress on this, and I have to tell you from my experience in the other community that this is very tough work, and it takes months, and I haven't spent most of my ACH hours in the Funds Flow Committee on the other side of the mountains. I believe we might not be ready to go today. And I have my little caucus with my colleagues online. I think it would be good to have a summary that says what is it that we're voting on, what is the change that is happening. I think we should have a more clear understanding of who's in the Medicaid versus non-Medicaid category and what determines that. And then vote over that. So I'd like to move that we table this for 1 meeting to get all those pieces together.
And while there's a motion on the table, does anyone want to second that? I second that. Okay. Is there any further discussion?
I would like to know if this delay of a month would cause any hardship.
So something to consider. The longer it's delayed and not approved, you're just delaying the whole process, because even once after you guys approve it, I have to create MOUs for 64 organizations, and I can't even submit a payment out until that MOU is signed. So then you have to factor in, like, let's say dance school process takes 2 months, so, or 3 months. And they're not going to
But we just said that we're not approving amounts, so you would not start the MOUs tomorrow, even if we approved it.
Well, and you can structure the MOU to refer to the attachments that attach the formula and the fill-in sheets later. You can have the core of the MOU done now.
That's also true.
I think that what would be very helpful though today, Jorge, is this is what the Budget and Funds Flow Committee and the Finance Committee have already approved within their subcommittees. This is not the whole or totality of the formula. So I think what you're saying is that maybe there are other items that we should consider in lieu of these, or is that what you're saying? Because right now we would just like to have some clarification. If this is good as it is, then at least then we have a base to build on, a foundation, and then we will know if we were to add, you know, an assessment for screening or some other item, you know, in this formula, then we could adjust it as such. But otherwise, then we're kind of up in the air in terms of if the board as a whole is uncomfortable with this kind of approach, then we don't, you know, we feel like we're losing a little bit of ground.
I think we were aiming for the first time to do it in April, right? April, May timeframe.
Probably more like May.
It's going to be May now because we're going to need 2 board meetings to approve the formula. We're hoping for that.
If that is a motion.
It's all a domino.
So I guess.
The only thing I can say to add to is this is not moving faster anywhere else. It's not that GCACH is behind the 8 ball on this. This is a complex conversation. But you guys, I mean, speaking on behalf of the sector that has no money on this, this is going to be very important for your stakeholders who have money on this. And you want to be transparent on saying we really understood what monies were going to go where, and we agreed on the criteria. So if everybody feels comfortable that there's enough information on the table today to move to the next step, will be fine. I just having trouble, and I wasn't part of the funds flow committee here, but I think, and you still can achieve what you want. There's many other ways, like the MOUs can be constructed in a different way. You can have more board meetings specifically for the approval of a particular motion, or the complementing the motion to be rounded so you can move forward. But I would encourage you on not making the decision based on we're running out of time, because that's a bad board decision by definition.
Okay.
Rhonda?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. I can't remember in our bylaws, but is there a way that they could pull together the formula, the things that Jorge had mentioned, and that we could vote via email rather than waiting for the next board meeting?
Well, I think that's possible, Lori. You know, this is kind of an important discussion, and so it feels like that's possible. But it's really hard to have a discussion via email, and I think giving that information out is going to generate a lot of discussion with additional information. So could we, just to see where we are, what I'd like to do is call, or have somebody call for the question. I guess I can't do that. And see where we are, see how people feel about delaying this for another month. Would that be okay if we did that?
Struggle.
And then we'll go from there. So would somebody?
Just a show of hands?
Well, yeah, but let's call for the question, because there's a motion and a second on the floor. So just do that. I don't think I can as the chair.
I'll call the question.
Thank you. So we have a call for the question. So let's do this by a raise of hand. The motion is to delay the decision. So basically, to not approve this at this meeting. And so that's the motion on the floor. So all in favor, raise your hand. So we have 2, 3 in the room. So 4 in the room. Is anyone on the phone raising their hand?
Yeah, it was Jim Averly, my hand's raised.
Jim?
This is Ed. Ed, my hand's raised.
Lori, my hand raised.
So we have 8. I count 8. Other people. And it's
I have 4 here and 4 on the phone. Jim, Ed, no,
Jim,
7.
Jim, Ed,
Lori.
and Lori on the phone.
Yeah, and then 4 here.
And then 4 here, so that's 7. Okay, so all opposed to waiting, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so the motion is approved. The motion is approved to wait. So hold on. Oh, wait, any abstentions? 1, 2. Are you abstaining, Martin? Are you an advisor? Okay.
Very convenient.
So the motion carries to postpone. Okay, so now, let's be clear on what additional information the board wants. So, in order to move forward, so.
That's what I was gonna say, can we get a really specific, suggested motion, so it's a real clear, so they say, we would like the motion to be X, Y, and Z, and so that we understand exactly what's being asked, because I think that's part of the confusion is
I agree.
we're not exactly sure how to make a motion when we're not exactly sure how to word the things. And so if we got just a real, this is what we would like you to approve. Okay, yeah, I can do that. That sounds good.
I think what would be helpful is what recommendations would you like to go to the budget and funds committee? Who has to take back the formula and reevaluate it? Are there items here specifically you want them to review or to resend or to add? And that would be the question that we would like to take back to the budget.
I think it would be good for the board to have the formula visible again. What is the formula? So how do you go from the whole to the different slots? So everybody can know how that looks, and that we could have under the current division, it's this much money for this category and this much money for this other category under the and with absolute numbers. And then under the motion revision, it would be this much money versus this much money. I don't think that I'm with Les. That's what we're struggling.
I want to know how we came up with like $1,000 in the LOI submission.
Yes, the basic description of how the funding is divided up, which I'm sure it was shown here. We're discussing with Sandra here. It's probably three meetings ago, but it's been a while, and I think that every time you want to get money, you want to know where you're coming from.
And to his point, we've had changes in the amounts and where everything's coming from since that last time it was discussed. So, Kylie, can you take you don't have to, can you take the board through these different compartments?
I'll pull it up. I'm going to my email right now.
All right.
So another question I have on this, I don't know if we're moving on to something different. Another question I have for this is if you have a non-Medicaid provider that's selling the project participation because they can't bill for it, they can't bill Medicaid, but yet they're still providing that service to those Medicaid recipients. What I'm not understanding is why we look at those a lot different than Medicaid providers. Medicaid providers are being reimbursed anyway, but these people are not being reimbursed, and so there's deficits in their budgeting and things like that. And so as a consumer, and participation in some of these services that were non-Medicaid providers because they were providing a stable service for me within the community. Then going to my provider who gets paid by my Medicaid care package. These guys always were in need of them. My Medicaid providers were not struggling with that kind of dynamic. So my question is how we came up with 13.5 when we're providing quality services here in Michigan. I think the primary reason is what you said is they're billing Medicaid. They're going to have to change the way they do business, right? And so the non-Medicaid providers are
addressing, the social determinants already, they're kind of already on board. We have to change the whole mindset of Medicaid providers. So we're paying them to change their mind, right? I'm sure you never felt
Participate and see the value.
right.
Yeah.
All of the money.
Right. So the one at first I was like you. I thought, oh, that's not really fair. They really be very important. But their minds don't have to be changed as much as the Medicaid providers. So
I think to add how they link into the bigger picture though.
Yeah,
So,
let's go there.
but at the same time, like, getting to your end goal of saving the amount that's being invested. So that is not entirely because they're the ones. Let's open them.
I think that's the huge difference is like these Medicaid providers are going to be the ones who look at metrics. And it's not that, I mean, I think they're equally important and everything, but the metrics is what's going to get us paid, unfortunately. And that's how it's set up.
And I think we need to remember this is for the first year only, and as we start to get incentive dollars in and identify based on the metrics, like for example, if housing is an issue, then for the next year we may have to carve out a little bit more to help those who are providing housing in order to continue to meet the metric and get the incentive. So you would be at that point with purpose, with good data, taking away from the Medicaid providers a little bit in order to support that, because that supports their overall goal as well. So this is just that 1 year. Yeah.
So,
we put the budget up so that Kylie can give you guys the bigger picture last that you wanted to know. So, Kylie, go ahead.
So this has all the avenues of funding for the first year that we're planning on receiving. So the first section under project costs, and just to preface, the budget categories is what healthcare authority is having us.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Is having us report on. So these are the categories that they've laid out for us, and we've incorporated them into how we plan to operate. So the project cost for a total of 34% is that incentive funding that this formula is based on. So this is a formula that we're trying to figure out how to distribute to the providers. You'll notice there is $1 million, and that's for high quality performers. So that's for, there's a description that says payments for reporting on project milestones, performance based, metric driven, essentially a budget that for any provider exceeding expectations. The shared domain 1, which is total of $5,734,000. So that is, well, essentially our health system creates a chassis building that we plan to do with throughout the state of Washington. So that's the shared domain 1 investment.
So Kylie, just to go back up to the top, so just to be clear, that $7 million, that's what we're talking about right now, that's being split 70/30. I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. So we're not talking about 70% of the total amount that we've received. It's 70% of that use category. Okay.
Yeah.
The 30, right.
so
Lori,
I think it was Ronnie. Was it Ronnie who had talked about the social service providers that are working with Medicaid clients, but not necessarily getting reimbursed for the Medicaid service. I would probably be remiss, since I'm representing social services, to say that if we're looking at social determinants of health, and I'm not exactly sure how this would work, but a lot of those social service providers are under-resourced, but yet it might be those social services that are really going to help enhance better health outcomes. So how would we get some of those dollars into those people's hands so that they have more of a resource to assist and help?
So I think, Lori, the issue wasn't that there wouldn't be dollars there. I think the discussion was how the dollars were split. And you may have missed part of this. on the bottom of those sheets, and what Carol, why don't you explain a little bit about the percentages of how those started and how they shifted? That might have been hard for the folks on the phone to hear.
So originally in September, Lori, when we didn't have any idea of what the split between Medicaid and non-Medicaid providers would be, the Budget and Funds Flow Committee came up with a 50-30% allocation. And with 50% going to the Medicaid providers and 30% going to the non-Medicaid providers. Okay. Then when we got our LOIs and we had like 53 Medicaid providers and 20 non-Medicaid providers, the total amount going to each group was so disproportionate that the non-Medicaid providers were getting like 4 times as much as the Medicaid providers.
Oh, okay.
So when the Budget and Funds Flow Committee met up at the beginning of March, they went, "Holy cow! You know, this is flipped from what we thought it would turn out to be." So that's why they reallocated those that investment.
Thank you.
So the way that the LOIs came in was disproportionate to the way that we were allocating the money. So we had originally thought that the split would be more even, would have more social service providers, and we didn't. So we ended up with like, I don't know, $4 million going to the Medicaid providers and $3 million going to the non-Medicaid providers, and then we split that out. If there's only 20 non-Medicaid providers, they're getting way more than Medicaid providers. So the Budget and Funds Flow Committee said, well, that doesn't seem very equitable. This was a much more equitable split when you're splitting out the dollars. And for this first year, when you look at the use categories, did they participate? Were they a facilitator? Did they apply for an LOI? It's very kind of even in terms of the way that we're allocating the money. The biggest difference is whether or not they're a patient-centered medical home or they're going to do a MEHAP, which is something that we're trying to reward and try to incent providers to do, because then that gives them more reason to connect to social services. Because if you're a patient-centered medical home, you automatically create these kind of partnerships in your community to extend that and leverage the services in your medical setting. So, for example, I would say, Yakima Valley Farm Workers, Yakima Neighborhood Health Services, they have already some of these built-in relationships with social service agencies. I think that's partly a result of being a patient-centered medical home, because that's a really good practice model. So if we incent providers to do that, then they are more likely to increase their relationships with the social service providers.
And can I think there's the off-topic, but it's in my mind as well. So we're looking at 85%. Is that what I'm thinking here? Okay. Anyway, my question that keeps running in my head is that we're looking at this in terms of the overall county coverage, right? What I don't see in front of us is like things that are being allocated for the Yakima, and I don't see am I missing something?
Kind of nice. It's different budget, but can we take you guys through the entire budget? I think that would be really helpful. Can we do that, Rhonda, just to take everybody through the big budget?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I think this will help clarify what you're talking about, Rhonda.
So that kind of the conclusion is
okay.
Okay. So the shared domain 1 investment, so the $5 million. Next category, that's money that we can't touch, and that's the combined money that they're going to figure out the list of items that they're going to do throughout Washington State of all the ACH is sharing for work. So we have another category below that called health systems and community capacity building, and this is in addition to the shared domain 1 investment, so that Greater Columbia can pursue other things related to BVP, population health management, workforce, that are not being included within the shared domain 1. And then another category of this is the tribal investment. So $235,000.
And, what's that kind of cover for them? The same health board, or is it different when you're working with them?
So it's slightly different when we're working with them. They also get, I don't know what we call it, LIN, for instance. They get the $30,000 a year for their LIN, but the $235K was more set aside for their IT infrastructure, capacity building. It may be part of if they decide to do the DHAT, paying for that student to go.
Does that come out equitable for them? Is that something enough what they're getting? But when I'm looking at all these numbers, I'm not what I am is an outcome person, and I like to see things equitable, fair across the board. And when I feel like there's something that's not a miss, we weren't prepared or we didn't do our job well enough, and there's a gap somewhere that we've missed, and I don't want that to happen across the board. So those are my concerns. I actually have a question. So, as you know, that within the tribe, we actually have like our own we are our own community. But we have housing, we have chemical dependency, we have, but we're all our own program. So, with that allocation of money, are we all having to fight within our own tribe to get some of that money? Because that will cause friction within our own tribe. If we're allocated that money, so per se, you guys give it to the tribe as like one set check for someone. Do you know how many programs are going to be fighting over that money? That's going to be causing some pretty heavy friction within our own program of those people who serve Medicaid. And not only that, is it going to be given appropriately within our own programs for the amount of Medicaid people we serve? Because like, I'm thinking about our VH program, we're strictly, that's how we function without Medicaid. We don't get travel support. So if we're the ones bringing in that Medicaid from a number and you're handing it over to just like the main contract person, you're going to allocate that to other programs who aren't seeing as many travel Medicaid programs or people and who are getting travel funding. So I'm already thinking, okay, if this is just one allocation, you're going to give it to like grants and contracts to disperse or to our travel council. That's going to be kind of scary. So
You're going to use it to offset travel dollars going into current programs? Is that what you're worried about?
We're not all tribally funded.
I know,
our
but
programs are tribally funded. Therefore, we work strictly off Medicaid 638.
you'd like to see the dollars coming back to you to help supplement and grow your current program.
Right. We're in need of a nurse practitioner right now, and we need another therapist. And there's 4 of us serving over 10,000 people.
There should be priorities or some set of help.
Some of this you're gonna have internal discussion. I don't think the ACH is gonna be able to resolve that for you. I think that.
But were you guys aware of that though? I mean, because we have all these programs within our own tribe. I mean, we have how.
Well,
Well, I think
We're
it's
ready.
similar.
Conversation, as we're kind of rolling out funds for, the readiness of the organization to
I think that'll be happening everywhere in some way. You know, dollars. You know, the hospitals are doing a lot of the direct services. Technically, they should be getting most of the incentive dollars coming back. When you know that, I think that it'll be happening in one way, shape, or form everywhere a little bit. But I think the ACH having good recommendation or message that's thoughtful on a recommendation on allocation of those dollars.
Yeah, I would just say, and I think that's a good point, because as an ACH, we only have so much authority.
Yeah.
We can't tell organizations how they're going to use their dollars within their own organization. That's way beyond
Well, I need to get an LOI though. I mean, am I going to go back and tell my supervisor that, okay, let's get this LOI ready for next annual? But then again, do we have to go and tell our housing to do the same? Do we have to do our adult chemical dependency? So this is stuff that we really need to clear through our HEW, because this will cause a lot of friction within our own community
place, it will not be, because money is very hard to come by.
Could I ask a clarifying question? So one of the requests for the finance committee was the motion to have the 7% Medicaid, 13% non-Medicaid. Then there's the GCACH holdback, and then wasn't the rest of that percentage for tribal? So shouldn't they already have been doing LOIs? Maybe that's a naive comment.
Well, we were limited to one LOI per organization, right? And so it's the tribe's considered one organization.
They get an automatic cutout.
Well,
Right,
that would
based
be,
on your Medicaid.
because I'm the only representation here, I'm gonna go apply for it, of course, and our program's gonna own it. See what I'm saying?
But that's, it has to be from whoever's authorized to sign, would need to approve it.
Which is
So that's within your organization. This body cannot make that decision for you.
Well, and we're not I'm here representing all public health, not just my own specific organization too. So I think there's that, that we go back and we look at from an equitable standpoint as well, and how this can benefit our greater community, the greater tribal community, the greater community, really in the public health system, large scale. But being strategic, I think though is that's the big thing. How can we be strategic to help these incentive dollars or whatever dollars, even these dollars are specifically tied to have the most impact. I think that's where the ACH needs. I might think, which I don't know if it's worth much, but to have the most impact. I think the ACH could have a thoughtful recommendation or statement or something about that. I don't know what to say, but that's our ultimate responsibility as well.
So I have to, as the chair, I have to be responsible here because I made an oversight and I need to clarify something. I'm not sure what we do here, but we had a motion on the floor that Jorge made, and I allowed it and shouldn't have because he's an alternate, and alternates can't vote.
We didn't catch that, I'm sorry.
And so we just pulled up the bylaws. So I think we have to know.
But that's motion, you can't make a motion.
Can't make a motion. Because we can't vote, and I think that means.
Can't vote, you would assume it can't make a motion,
Yeah.
can't vote for
It's not a reasonable.
Only voting
I think
members
that's
can
the
make
reasonable.
motions.
Yeah, only voting motion. So I think we have to nullify that motion. And so if somebody else wants to make a new motion to support the same thing, I think they could do that, but we have to nullify the motion that was just approved.
Yeah.
Jorge can't make motion.
Or we would have to wait until Caitlin can call in.
So, but there are other people here that supported it. So if Ronnie, if somebody else wants to make a motion, they can certainly do that. But we need to not move forward on the motion that Jorge made because he's not allowed to. So my apologies for not catching that sooner.
I'm saying words, I make the motion.
But you need to make the motion.
What was the word that we table that for till next month? And then we revisit it with new information.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor.
I'll second.
The funds flow, for the decision, for the green sheet. It's tabled until next month with further information, and it was seconded, was that Lori?
Yes.
Okay, seconded by Lori. So, again, I'm gonna ask the people in the room to raise their hands. If you approve that, so I have 1, 2, raise your hands high, 2, 3, 4 in the room. How many people on the line approve that?
I do.
Lori?
This is Ed. I continue my vote.
Ed?
Yeah, this is Jim. Same. Yes.
Okay, so that's still 8 approved. Okay, those who
It should
oppose?
be 8, because you were counting me, should be one less.
Well, if you've had change votes.
Somebody changed.
I changed it.
Ah, okay.
So, those who oppose? 1, 2, 3. 3 opposed, and any abstention? 1 abstention. Okay, all right, so the motion still carries, so thank you for entertaining me. Okay, so, Carol, go ahead.
It would be 9.
Yeah. it would be 9 to pass, I think, now that we've added a member.
But I mean,
No, but it has to be-
because,
More than 9.
that was the total.
Yeah, we have a
It's
quorum.
one of the-
So, I share your concern, Tanya, you know, and I think that the staff will be working with the Yakima. My understanding from the health care authority that each tribe has been given some funding to have a tribal liaison to work with. I've been working with communities through that person. But I understand your concern that the funding sets up the tribes to have inner, you know, internal disputes, just like all of these organizations are going to have the same conversation. So, it's kind of more of an administrative thing that we can help you with, I think.
Well, I just want a clarification, so I don't expect anybody to come and fix our ECW, because as poor Carol found out, we're pretty strict with our tribal council.
Yeah.
Our sergeant at arms is not afraid to speak up, so I leave it to that. And so I don't expect anybody to go in there and try to, you know, fix or say anything. I just want a clarification because, you know, I'm the one that's reporting back to my HEW and my supervisor. So if it's an LOI that is going to have to be done by our HEW committee by Sam, our councilwoman, then that's where I'm going to start hearing those thoughts towards, because this will have to take, and it takes probably longer than YBC to get through our tribal council. I mean, she got to see how long the effort it was to get her into council. We had to find, you know, councilmen. And so these are things that I need to know so I can take it back. And so that was, thank you for clarifying that, because I'm going to be having some email slotting out. What we can do to get on there for the next annual budget, and see how she's wanting to do that.
Okay, so we have just 20 minutes left. How would you like to all proceed with that 20 minutes? What's the best use of that time? Should we continue with this budget, or do we want to clarify what information we'd like to have in order to approve?
Could we at least take you through the rest of the budget so that everybody has a sense of what the overall budget looks like for this year?
All right. Okay.
The next section is the BHI incentives, and that's the $4 million. Behavioral health integration. And then following that is the social determinants of health fund, which includes our integration fund, and that's just for investments, whether it's in health fairs or anything basically that we can fund that has to do with social determinants. And then that also contains our contingency reserve funding, which is $852,000, and that's for unforeseen conditions or anything that may happen. And whatever is not used in that section does roll up to the project cost, so the incentive money. So anything we don't use in the reserves will go back to the providers. And then the last section is the project management and administration, and that's just all of our administration costs, including benefits.
Has a, you finished? Okay. So to the question, has a process been developed for community-based organizations that are countywide or regional-wide, looking at social determinants, large social determinants of health projects? Has there been a process developed to
For application?
for application?
No.
There is, but there is potentially a process that's going to be developed for that.
Exactly. And that was part of that whole discussion about the allocation formula, is that there is a social determinant of cost fund, $1 million, which social service agencies and CBOs can apply for. So it's not like we're trying to leave them out of this formula, that there's other places in the budget that they could find funding for, but we have not gotten to that level yet of breaking out, or how would they apply, or what is the criteria to get some of that funding. However, Ruben is going out into the communities and working with all the LINs now to understand within their regions what are the biggest health and social issues, so that at least we have some sense then of, you know, what are the opportunities that might be out there for these funding. So.
I think that we need to look at what are the different social determinants and have something in there, you know, housing, education, transportation, and are we going to do something kind of targeted in each of those broader areas throughout the region? Because a lot of these organizations don't even know that that they are a social determinant, what the work that they do is part of social determinant of health, and so I think that there maybe should be a wellness committee or something like that looking at, I'm not proposing a remedy, sorry, but something that is a strategy for this $1 million, because otherwise it's going to be a shotgun approach, and I don't think shotgun approaches necessarily give you the right return on investment.
And who's there and who's not? I mean, to Dan's point, because now we have three categories. We have the category of providers of Medicaid services, the ones who are not on Medicaid services, but many of them are Medicaid organizations, and some, like Blue Mountain Heart to Heart, which is a community-based organization, happens to be on Medicaid. So where do they fit? Do they fit as these $1 million in this lower, or do they fit in the second page of this chart?
Exactly, because Blue Mountain Heart to Heart doesn't bill Medicaid. Does it have to fit in one? And so
That's the question. So
there's the providers, there's people who are providers, those who are billing Medicaid for direct services, because then there's, I think that definition. Well, actually, they do, but they don't bill Medicaid. They don't have contracts with the NCO.
As far as I know,
they don't Medicaid through the HIV.
But
They get that money from the OH directly. I just know, and I know Everett very well. And I know.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. So
they're here. They're on the front page.
They are.
Well, I think it's reasonable to say that pretty much everybody that comes to the ACH table are serving Medicaid clients.
Right.
Many of them don't bill.
Whether Medicaid's paying you or not.
Social service agencies because they serve low-income people.
Very true.
And they're different. They have different funding sources.
And by the state, some out of Medicaid.
So again, in what time we have left, the question is, because we want to make sure that we have a committee that's been dedicated to working on this, and they've done a good job, but this body is feeling a lacking of information to be able to approve the formulas that they've done a good job creating. So let's make sure that they have an understanding, and Carrie's here, so she can carry this back along with the staff. What is it that you want in terms of approving this formula?
I think it's very important that there is a connecting point in numbers between this one and this one. So what number from here exactly is carrying on?
7 point.
Which extract of this?
The very top one.
So it's only that 30%. So people will be voting in that number against what? What is the change?
Oh, you're splitting it up.
The split. So what's the split? It's very easy. I don't think we're asking rocket science here. It's a little table that says this is the total, this is the 70, this is the 30, and then the other column, this is the total, this is the 85, this is the 15.
I think what would be easier for me is if I saw the recommendation with all of these columns green versus a portion of these columns green, because it's hard to see the big picture with only a portion of these columns green. I think what's in green that came forward as a recommendation on it for what it is probably really, really good, but I have a hard time seeing this carve out from the entirety of how everything's going to get allocated across all these columns.
I will say our first meeting was by phone.
That part, yeah.
And so we decided to meet in person, and we met in person for 4 hours.
Yeah.
So I understand if that makes sense.
Yeah. But I think that at the next meeting, whenever we do this, we can trust the information that comes to the people as well, because I think that they don't see a problem. I think that there are some gaps, possibly, but
I think we need to speak to that a little bit more. Because I think you need to, I think you need to speak to that. You're saying you don't trust this information?
I do trust this information, but I know a lot of these organizations, and I think there needs to be a definition of provider, a Medicaid provider. I think because most of these Medicaid providers, I would assume almost all of these could fit on here, and some of these could fit back here, depending on how we're defining Medicaid provider versus non-Medicaid.
So these are the providers that bill Medicaid that have been validated by SAM.
So they have a meeting, they have
They have
a
an
Medicaid
NPI number.
NPI.
Yes, they all have an NPI number that they submitted to us that she is verified.
So, okay, so let me just ask this question, because if part of what their process is they're going to validate the number of Medicaid clients. So if they're able to do that, because that's a big part of this formula, would that address your concern?
Yeah, and I think that's the only gap I see, because, like Kennewood Fire Department has an NPI. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Because they have EMS?
Yeah, that was just, I think, for the hospital.
Emergency services.
Yeah, they're going.
So I think that justification with the Medicaid client. Yeah.
So is there a need for more clarification around this? So we can either go into the box account and do more analysis, or we can actually make a specific request to Medicaid to actually give us the bill analysis from county 2017.
Well, but I think that's what Carol said, you're already requesting the number of Medicaid clients by organizational NPI, and it sounds to me, that's why I wanted the clarification, that's the concern about accuracy.
You know, that number drives the rest of it. I mean, it's the second column.
Right.
To me, the columns kind of go order of food. You got to know their besides the name of their organization, you got to know how many Medicaid clients they're serving, because Virginia Mason Hospital, I'm surprised they only see 34,000, and Providence Health and Cadillac, they see the exact number of Medicaid clients. So very each, and so it's just like,
So we have emails into a lot of these organizations that we have not gotten responses yet from. And then tonight with my conversation with Steve Birch, it will be about this column number 1 called number of Medicaid clients, because this is something that all the ACHs are struggling with, is that we have not been given a duplicated numbers from the healthcare authority. And there are some ACHs like King County who bill Medicaid for their county so that they have a better understanding of this. But for the rest of us, we don't have access to that.
Just to show an example, in the Olympic Peninsula, we had this conversation, we beat it to death. We decided to go with a self-attested Medicaid lives because we just didn't find any other better way, and the board approved that. And the board approved that understanding. But it was presented. I mean, it was like, this is the situation. We have this option. It's not good because it's very great. This one is very great. The only one that we can see today is to accept self-attestation from our provider partners. And the board voted for it because we understood that wasn't another option.
Okay, so I'm going to do this again. I'm going to keep pushing. So we're trying to validate those numbers. So with any luck at all, we are. Okay, so that column really applies to the Medicaid providers and validating those numbers, because that's going to be a part of the formula. Notice on your sheet that that's not in green.
Right.
So are there any concerns about the columns in green and what the staff has, what the budget and funds flow committee have laid out in green? Originally, when we started, Jorge brought up the conversation about how this $7 million fit into the bigger picture. Do we have any further questions about that now that the staff has produced?
This is helpful.
Okay, are there any
Glad you brought this.
additional questions, or does that clarify this?
Are we covering Spokane?
No.
No, we're not.
They're in a different.
But
Health, where's that at? Okay. Got it. Got it.
So does this clarify those questions?
I would say to the green portion of this, it would be just good that the board saw the definitions. What are we calling? Because it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be equally informed for everybody. What do we call a Medicaid provider? What do we call a non-Medicaid provider? And what do we call a community-based organization that is not either of those two?
So can we do that? Can I propose a motion that we define Medicaid provider by a provider who has an MPI number that is registered with Medicaid?
You can. I can't.
Okay.
They've already done that.
They've already.
That's already.
No, we haven't voted on it, but that's
That's already went into that.
But that is the definition.
Okay.
That is the definition.
Your motion for something that already is. It already is.
The board needs to be.
Because I just.
You
Okay, so these columns though are not accurate.
Everybody can say it.
So that's
But
my.
I think this may not be accurate. We're not looking at the accuracy, we're looking at the methodology. Yeah. So that we need to remember that. I trust Carol and team to go through the validation process and make sure that they present us with the process, an overview of that process, so that we know and can sleep at night that
yes, they went through and they uncovered this is what they had to do to validate all these organizations and numbers and et cetera. So it's really more about the allocation methodology that I think.
So, okay, so what I'm hearing is that people would feel comfortable seeing that in the minutes of the motion. Some of those definitions. So Megan, go ahead, and I apologize for interrupting. So go ahead and do that.
With the motion that we formally define, this column for number of Medicaid providers by submitted enrolled, either NPI numbers with the healthcare authority.
Okay. Is there a second? Second? Okay. Is there any further discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention?
So the only other thing that I would feel better about as far as looking at this allocation formula is to really identify what's going to be in OU and what we're going to get for the funds.
And can you expound on that? What does that mean?
So you're creating the MOU to be able to disperse the funds. And so is this rewarding everyone for coming to the table, kind of peanut butter approach, or is there a target focus that anyone that receives these funds is going to obligate themselves to?
That's interesting because, I encourage a lot of people to submit a lie. Those strings attached have a lie, but then we're giving them money to do it. They didn't know that there was going to be money on the table either, and I kind of thought we were an unpaid board in that sense too. I mean, I'm not trying to get for participating, but I think
Checks are coming to me. I know I won't see it.
So the legal process went through that, and we're not paying you, we're paying the organization.
the organization. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, just but then. And like there's the only my reservations there's two columns like there's community engagement and CES individual. They don't have anything in them. So it's not there yet.
Right, so I didn't get that column yet. Just going back on this one.
Okay, so now we're putting in a reservation.
So
We're putting everything in green.
Correct.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to focus on the columns in green.
Yes, that's all I'm.
So I'm only with the MOU. It's going to pay participation up to date, and then it's going to allow these organizations to earn this money. It's not obligating them to actually, you have to do this, or you have to do this. We want to encourage them to, and if they do, we're going to reward you. But it's not going to obligate them to do all of, things that have not been performed yet. So, yeah, so it's gonna provide an opportunity and then pay for past performance that's already been done.
So you're gonna, if they sign the MOU, they get $1,000.
Yeah. Because it's gonna take someone's time to work with me and to, to actually get the signature. It's gonna take a whole lot of people's time since you're college. So, I mean, we wanna incentivize and pay people for their time essentially. We don't want it for free.
To collaborate.
Other ACHs have done that. I know CHT has done that for sure, and a couple of the other ones that I've talked to, they do that too. So it's not outlying.
But I think to Madeline's point, she would like to see what the verbiage looks like, right, within the MOU.
Yeah, and so we can bring that back.
Yeah. I mean, we can build the body of it, but the amendments or the addendums are going to be based on the formula. So
Yes.
that's kind of where it's
There'll
at.
be a language in there around the practice transformation.
Yes.
Community engagement. I think that language.
So everything that is laying out within this formula is going to be on the addendums, and that's why it's not written yet because they're not approved.
So was the intention to come back and have the columns that are not green be green next month?
Yes, and we're completely done with the formula.
Then I don't have a motion because what I would motion for is already part of your intent for the next meeting, which is I would like to see, for me, I need to see the full picture, not vote on a portion of the picture now and a portion later.
I guess the hope was
take a straw poll, I think you could start writing it. I just think there's a level of uncomfortableness
So it might be
in just that.
easier to vote on what you've written than vote on what.
I think that's what she was trying to get to. Yes, but my question was, when they have, it's the percentages that were concerning me. And it was the non-Medicaid billers that I was concerned with versus the Medicaid billers. Because of the social service part of things and the determinants of lower income service, that is part of it through those organizations as well as the Medicaid providers that do this. So those are my concerns. I think with what Carol had told me, that I had her repeat. But I think that kind of clarified in my mind, across the board, it is being equitable for all parties that are involved. So I'm comfortable with you going forward. I just want to make sure that our board is on page and they get their needs too, because I wasn't the only one raising my hand saying, wait a minute.
So anybody on the phone has something they want so they can vote?
We don't have a motion?
I mean, no, next time.
Oh,
If they're looking at what information we need so this decision can be made next time.
that's all. Those are the questions. That's what I'm still asking, is we're still, and I'm still focused on the area in green because that's what, that was the first priority. So whether it's on the phone or at the table, is there any additional questions? The things we've talked about, I'm still, in my mind, we've had the staff have answered today. And so I want to make sure that we have the information so we don't have a new set of questions about the area in green next month. So let's start with on the phone. Is there anybody on the phone that has any additional questions about the formula that's highlighted in green?
This is Ed. I have no additional question.
Thank you, Ed.
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Thank you, Lori. Okay, Dan?
I just need a couple of examples of what might be in the column.
Yeah, so the community engagement column and the CFS, or CES, stands for Community Engagement Specialist. I just put out the name of the individual that is going to be supplied. So our idea on that is to work with organizations. And while we have Ruben as our community engagement specialist, he can't be in all places at once. And someone with boots on the ground in that location is going to know that location better than us. So our idea is to work with those that have community engagement already. So let's say the Lily works for Virginia Mason. So attaching a stipend to that to take some of her time to assist us in that county with community engagement. So if we're going to do a health fair in that location and take 20 hours of our time, let's just say, then we would like to.
So you're gonna have one in each county? Or are you, I'm just, the definition of that.
I think that's what we envision, someone from the larger.
Maybe even somebody within the wind.
Yes.
I think the idea is to pay people for the time that they're spending towards.
Making it work.
Yeah.
They have this process for the organization. And it's working in project. But then why would they be? I mean, that sounds like it could be someone who's not even on any one of these particular things. From your local, whatever. Potentially. So that, I guess, yeah.
They wouldn't be, if they weren't involved, they wouldn't be a very good engagement.
Yeah.
If they're involved, I mean, like, I'm involved, but I'm not. So maybe there's someone in one of their local organizations in their group that is very involved, but isn't necessarily an employee of one of these organizations.
Communities will figure it out.
Yeah, so I guess so.
I'm gonna charge the local health improvement network to identify who that is. I mean, I think that would be a very fair directive for the I believe was Ronnie, and then seconded by Natalie. Why don't you just make, could someone repeat that, the language for that motion?
So it's to table action on approving the use category, this meeting, and take it to the next meeting for approval.
Okay. Approval of the flat stipend and percentage allocation. And that's separate from the other motion that was, there were two motions.
Yeah, there had to be rescinded.
Yeah.
Okay, so that wasn't like another one that was. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, it is 3 o'clock.
Could I ask one clarifying question though? For the remaining columns that are white, like willing to screen through social determinants, if there are any other columns that this body would like for the Budget and Funds Flow Committee to consider, this would be the time to bring that up because they're going to try to finish the funds formula next month. So is there anything in addition to the willing to determine or willing to assess for social determinants? Are there any columns that?
Just clarify, I'd just like to clarify that that will apply to the Medicaid providers as well as the non-Medicaid.
Okay.
Health information technology.
Oh.
These abbreviations are, and we're not looking for like a special call just for those.
Right.
That could come under community engagement.
Okay. And I think one of the next things for the Budget and Funds Flow Committee then will be to go over the community engagement dollars. And Megan had suggested, I'm sorry she had to leave, but for example, North Central has determined that housing and I think was it transportation, Madeline? Oh, probably. That were the two highest needs of social determinants. So as we taking a look at that formula, the board might want to consider prioritizing some of those social determinants because otherwise we're going to just spread the money so thin it's not going to really go anywhere. But if we concentrate on the most important social determinants within that category, I think that we could really make an impact.
Would the consumer, whatever index that you mentioned, CNI, would that give us that information for our region and by community?
I don't believe so.
No.
But we can look into that in more detail.
We have another measure that we looked at previously, area deprivation index, which breaks it down by block.
Okay. Is there any other business for the good of the order today?
I said, good job.
Earned your pay today.
Okay. All right, well, good luck to you.
Oh, thank you.
We will miss you.
We will.
We welcome you, Lauren.
Thank you.
And Ruben, this is your first meeting, so we welcome you. And all, we will see you next month. Meeting adjourned.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
You can hit the.
There's no